On a cold Philadelphia night in 1975, a man sat alone in a New York City apartment with nothing but a pen, a legal pad, and a dog he could no longer afford to feed. He had been rejected by over 1,500 acting agents. His electricity had been shut off. At one point, too broke to pay for heat, he slept in the Port Authority bus terminal. And yet, inside that freezing flat, Sylvester Stallone wrote through the night, not a letter of surrender but a screenplay. 86 hours later, Rocky was born. That script would go on to earn him an offer most people would consider life-changing. $300,000 from a major Hollywood studio, roughly $1.6 million in today's money. The catch: he could not be the star. They wanted a real actor. A name. Someone like Ryan O'Neal or Burt Reynolds. Someone, essentially, who was not Sylvester Stallone. He turned them down. Every single time they asked. I'd rather be broke and hungry than sell the thing that might make me who I'm supposed to be. By this point, he had already made one of the most gut-wrenching decisions of his life. Desperate, with just $106 to his name, Stallone had sold his best friend, his bull mastiff, Butkus, to a stranger outside a convenience store for $25. He couldn't afford to feed him. He wept walking away. Days later, clutching his freshly optioned screenplay, the first thing he did was return to that store and beg the man to sell Butkus back. The man refused. Stallone offered $100. Still no. He ultimately paid $3,000 and gave the man a small role in the film just to get his dog back. That is not the story of a lucky man who got a break. That is the story of a man who decided, categorically, irrevocably, that being underestimated was not a verdict. It was a starting position. The invisible architecture of being counted out. There is a strange alchemy that happens when the world decides you don't matter. Most people absorb the judgment and shrink to fit it. A rare few, the ones history eventually writes about, do something entirely different. They use the world's low expectations as a kind of structural advantage. When no one is watching, there's no performance to maintain. When no one believes in you, there's no approval to chase. The only compass left is the one inside. Psychologists call it the underdog effect. Researchers at the University of Southern California found that people rooting for the underdog, and people being the underdog, consistently outperform predictions precisely because they stop calculating what's probable and start calculating only what's necessary. They trade the measurable for the meaningful. Stallone understood this instinctively. He had spent years being told what he was: a man with a partially paralyzed face due to nerve damage at birth, a slurred speech that casting directors called unprofessional, a body type Hollywood didn't know what to do with. He grew up in foster care in Hell's Kitchen. He failed out of the American School of Switzerland. His first film was one he'd prefer you never found. What he was not was a man anyone would have written a success story about. And that, it turns out, was precisely the point. The $25 dog and the $300,000 they couldn't buy. Let's sit with the weight of that offer for a moment. $300,000 to a man who had just sold his dog for $25. A man who knew what it felt like to choose between eating and keeping the heat on. The studios weren't being cruel. They were being rational. From every measurable angle, their logic was sound. Stallone was not bankable. He was not recognizable. He was not what the market had validated. And yet, he understood something the studios did not. A story about an underdog only works if an underdog tells it. Rocky Balboa, the South Philly club fighter who gets one shot at the heavyweight title, would ring hollow played by a polished Hollywood star. The authenticity was the asset. The struggle was the point. The face that had been rejected 1,000 times was the only face that could make you believe in what you were watching. The lesson that gets buried under the legend. Stallone didn't succeed in spite of everything that made him seem like a long shot. He succeeded because of it. His specific disadvantages created a specific kind of credibility that no amount of money or studio machinery could manufacture. What the world saw as disqualifying, he had quietly turned into the only thing that would make the whole enterprise real. Rocky was made for $1 million. It was released in November 1976. By the end of its run, it had grossed over $225 million worldwide. It won 3 Academy Awards including Best Picture and Best Director. It was nominated for 10. Stallone himself was nominated for Best Actor and Best Original Screenplay, becoming only the third person in Oscar history to receive nominations in both categories in the same year, joining Charlie Chaplin and Orson Welles. The man they said wasn't good enough to be in his own movie became the face of one of the most beloved film franchises in history. What betting on yourself actually costs. We have a tendency when we retell stories like this to make them clean, to file away the mess. We describe the arc, Broke man writes script, turns down money, wins Oscar, as though it were the inevitable unfolding of a destiny we should have seen coming. We forget the part where he sat with $25 in his pocket watching a stranger walk away with his dog. Betting on yourself is not a motivational poster. It is a specific recurring decision made in the dark, when no metric supports it, when no one is cheering, when the rational choice is to take the money and let someone else carry the dream. It costs something real every single time you make it. What made Stallone exceptional wasn't just belief, it was the cost he was willing to absorb in service of that belief. Stallone famously said, "I am not the richest, smartest, or most talented person in the room, but I am the most determined." Most people conflate self-belief with certainty. They wait for the moment it feels safe to back themselves, when the odds are reasonable, when there's a fallback, when someone else has already proven the path exists. But that's not belief. That's calculation dressed up in inspirational language. Real self-belief operates in the absence of evidence. It is, by definition, irrational. And that irrationality, that stubborn, embarrassing, often lonely refusal to accept what the world has decided for you, is exactly what makes it so rare and so powerful. The counterintuitive gift of low expectations. Here is what no one tells you about being underestimated: it is a form of freedom. When people expect nothing from you, they stop watching. When they stop watching, you stop performing. And when you stop performing for an audience that was never really yours to begin with, you find out, sometimes for the first time, what you are actually capable of. Stallone had no safety net, but he also had no ceiling. The studios had made clear he wasn't worth $300,000 of risk as the lead of his own movie. In doing so, they had accidentally handed him the only creative environment in which Rocky could have been made. One with total freedom, total ownership, and zero expectations to manage other than his own. He couldn't afford to fail, and simultaneously no one thought he'd succeed. That combination, high personal stakes with no institutional pressure, is where most great things get made. Stallone went back for his dog. Before the film came out. Before the awards. Before the sequels. Before the franchise worth billions. When he finally had the money and the leverage, the first thing he did was fix the thing that broke him most. He didn't wait to see if the film would work. He didn't hedge. He went back and made himself whole. That detail matters more than most people realize. It tells us something about the psychology underneath the legend. Stallone wasn't running away from his circumstances. He was running towards something specific. A version of himself, and a version of his life, that he refused to abandon even when everything around him said he should. Butkus wasn't just a dog. He was proof of something, that the man who sold him was not the man Stallone intended to remain. Every person who has ever bet on themselves, and one will tell you a version of this story. There is something you leave behind on the way up. And the first thing you do when you make it is go back and get it. 3 things Stallone teaches us. 1. Your disadvantages have a shelf life, if you use them. Stallone's facial paralysis, his accent, his rough edges. Every single one of those flaws became load-bearing walls in the Rocky mythology. The things that got him rejected by 1,500 agents were the same things that made the character undeniable. Disadvantages only stay disadvantages if you never find the context in which they become assets. 2. Ownership is worth more than comfort. He turned down money that would have changed his immediate life. He did it not because he was foolish, but because he understood that creative ownership, being the person in his own story, was a different kind of currency. He was right. The difference between $300,000 and what Rocky ultimately earned him is the difference between a transaction and a legacy. 3. The moment of maximum doubt is often the moment of maximum proximity. Stallone was at his most desperate, $25 left, dog sold, electricity cut, right before he wrote the thing that would change his life. That's not coincidence. Constraint has a way of stripping out everything that isn't essential and leaving you with only what actually matters. The noise goes quiet. The real work begins. So, what are you sitting on? Somewhere right now there is a version of your Rocky, an idea, a project, a chapter of your life, that you have not fully backed because the conditions don't feel right. Because the evidence isn't there. Because someone with more authority than you has looked at what you're building and decided it isn't worth the risk. Let them be wrong. The studios were absolutely correct, by every conventional metric, that Sylvester Stallone should not have been cast in Rocky. They were wrong about everything that actually mattered. The world is very good at measuring what already exists. It has never been particularly reliable at predicting what is possible. Being counted out is not a problem to be solved. It is, if you're paying attention, the clearest possible signal that you're doing something the world hasn't seen yet. Use it. The $25 dog and the $300,000 offer are both waiting for you. The question is what you'll do between them. Your move. The script doesn't write itself. If this story lit something in you, don't let it fade. Share it with someone who needs it, or better yet, start writing your own first draft today. Like and subscribe.